And how many hundreds have you finished now?
This is my sixth
Six.
finish.
Okay, perfect. All right, y'all. We are back. We are on the trail tonight. We are hitting the trails with a longtime friend of the Airey Bros, mountain athlete, ultra marathoner, ski patroller, yoga instructor, all around badass, and currently ER nurse. So she's making the rounds as well, using that as good training. But we're joined by Emily Coggin tonight. She is one of my OG Black Sheep Endurance athletes, clients. She's trusted in me for quite a long time now. So she just finished her second Leadville 100 and her sixth 100 miler. And so we are getting on the trail with Emily tonight to hear all about the most recent Leadville 100 finish a couple weeks ago. So, Emily, thanks for joining the Airey Bros. Welcome. We do appreciate you and your time tonight.
Thanks for having me. I'm honored to be here.
Yeah, like I said, it's we've known each other. I think we first met in 2017 when I came back to Vail to Lulu, and you were attempting your first Leadville, and that was going to be my, I guess that was my second go. Second go, I broke my foot and didn't never made it to the starting line in 2015, but 2017 was my second finish, and then after, and you had an unfortunate where you made it all the way to back to Twin Lakes, and then didn't make the cutoff, correct?
I made it to May Queen. So
Make what did I say? Twin Lakes, yeah,
last,
Close
make
enough.
yeah,
Close enough.
yeah,
not even close.
87 miles.
87 miles. And then, yeah, you thought, let me see what this crazy guy has to offer and see if he can help me get across the finish line. So we've been working together since probably the spring of 2018.
Yes. Yeah.
Awesome. And you're also an East Coaster, correct?
Yep. Maryland.
Okay. Are you like Eastern Shore, Baltimore, Western Maryland?
I think I'm kind of in between because I have like the coastal attitude from being in Annapolis, but then like going to school in Baltimore, have a little Baltimore cred, I guess. And yeah, that's really where my like running career started. So
And did you run? You ran obviously. I mean, you went to Bucknell. You ran for Coach Donner. So what is your origin story? How did you get into running, and how did you get to Bucknell?
so my mom is the big runner,
Mhm.
kind of like how
Shout
I
out to
was.
Martha.
Yep, shout out to Martha. Um, and she had done a lot of distance running, and I just kind of started doing it. I was a big lacrosse player, like everybody else in Maryland. And then when I got to high school and started running, I kind of found a little niche and excelled. And then when it came time to go to college, I decided that I wanted to go somewhere where I could run and not necessarily be the top person on the team, but I kind of picked Bucknell first and then got lucky enough that they let me be a part of the program. And I was a three sport athlete there. So cross country, indoor, and outdoor track for all 4 years of college.
Did you have cross country experience from high school, or was you were just a track athlete in high school?
Yes, I didn't do outdoor track until my senior year because
Okay.
I played lacrosse. And so that was kind of, I'd only done indoor and they had been trying to get me to do outdoor track for a couple years. And then my senior year, I was the runner up for our conference in the 800 and indoor. And that kind of, I was like, oh, well, I really want to see what I can do in outdoor. And I think I was third in outdoor, but yeah.
Was it hard to step away from lacrosse?
No, at that point, I think I reached my limit. Plus, I think running really is more of my vibe, kind of a team sport, but it's, an individual effort in a lot of ways.
But at the same time, it's more your vibe. But when we first started working together, you had some trauma from doing intervals and running workouts. Yeah.
I think I still do. Like the idea of doing track workouts still, like I can smell a hot track and just have like PTSD from college. And
I feel you.
I mean, I think you guys understand. I've gotten a little bit more willing, as Rich knows, to do intervals in the last few years, but I definitely that's a kind of pain that stays with you.
Yeah.
So
Well, the hot tracks smell a little bit different out west because you don't have that humidity. We talk to all the college coaches, and they say humidity is the poor man's altitude. And there's just something about that hot, steamy track after it rained doing intervals. I feel you brought me right there. I just had a flashback.
yeah, yeah, for sure. And I got really lucky because the program I went to at Bucknell, it's D1, but it wasn't like, you know, kill or be killed. And it really, Coach Donner really fostered, he took pride in kind of developing athletes. And so I really benefited from that. And that gave me a lot of experience and confidence and just kind of a lot of just gritty, go from the back of the pack and just hang on and do your best kind of mentality.
Well, I want to get into the running and how it kind of transferred to ultra running, but I don't want to get too far from the origin story growing up in Maryland. I must ask, do you like crab cakes? Do you have a crab cake spot when you go back?
Of course, I like crab cakes. Don't ever buy crab cakes anywhere out west. If they say Maryland crab cakes, they're not really Maryland crab cakes. As you guys know from being from the shore, seafood is a little different out here. Um, and I think my favorite spot is there's a place really close to where I grew up called Lures. That's really good crab cakes. So if you're ever in Annapolis, you have to go there.
Not to be too much of a nerd, but is it breaded? Is it lightly breaded? Is it light? Is it kind of crab cake you eat and you're gonna be dead because it's so heavy? Do you put the tartar sauce on it? Do you eat it as is?
I'm more of a lemon, not a tartar sauce fan. And this is like pure crab. Like there's no breading. It's like minimal egg, mayonnaise, little breadcrumb, but none of the other stuff in there. So yeah.
You being from Maryland, from the East Coast, when you hear people out west are like, "Oh, we're going to get sushi or going to get seafood," are you like? Because I'm always like, and not that I'm a big seafood eater, but I'm always like, well, I grew up at the beach. Like, I don't. It seems weird to be eating fish, saltwater fish, at least in the middle of the country.
Yes, I definitely agree. Yeah, I 1 year for my birthday, I got like a crab feast and people were like, "What is this? What's happening?" And I was like, "This is normal. This is how it's supposed to be eaten. This is how it's really done."
Yeah.
So, coming from college, you did 800, but you did run cross country. How do we get from cross country 800-meter track athlete to 2017 running ultra marathons?
Well, I think when I first moved out here, there wasn't really like a big trail running scene that I was aware of in Maryland at the time. And, cross country you run on a golf course usually, especially in college. Um, and I think when I moved out here, I just really fell in love with the trails and fell in love with exploring. And um, I found that I had a little engine, like a little uphill engine. So I was pretty good at just kind of grinding away. And, the farther you go, the more you can explore. And I did some runs out here, nothing like super long. And then I signed up for a race in Telluride that I had heard about called the Imogene Pass race. And I call that my gateway drug to ultra running. And it's only a 17-mile race, but you gain 3,000 or more than 3,000 feet in 10 miles. You go up to like 13,000 feet and then you come down, you lose like 6,000 feet in 7 miles down to town. And the first year I did it, I just like loved it. And I had this feeling of like, oh yeah, this is what I should be doing. And from there, I just kind of decided I wanted to do longer. And the longer I did, the more I kind of enjoyed it and found that I was, pretty decent at it. And the idea of going slower for longer periods of time was appealing, as well as eating snacks on the way. Um, and then I had always heard about the JFK 50, which is the oldest ultra marathon in the country, and it's in Maryland, which is pretty cool, Western Maryland. And um, I really wanted to do that race, and I needed a qualifier for it. So I did a 50K. In 5 weeks, I did Imogene, a 50K, and then I actually ran the Steamtown Marathon, road marathon with my mom within 5 weeks. And then I did the JFK 50 like a month and a half later. And I haven't stopped since.
Dang. What year was that?
That was 2016.
Okay. Okay.
So you mentioned going slower and eating snacks was appealing, but like Rich said, you ran the 800 in college. And I know when Rich started doing his ultras and he would kind of call me up and give me his times, I'd be like, wait, what? For 30 miles? Like I'm thinking road splits and his marathon. And then it took actually crewing him some races like, oh, this is not the same. So did you have like a learning curve? I know Rich had to throw his watch out after a certain point.
Yeah, I think when I first started running trail, I think I still had like old school analog like watch. I don't think I had even a Garmin or anything. So I think that kind of helped because I just had no idea how fast or how slow I actually was going. And I was just kind of running by feel. And then, yeah, I really had to kind of unlearn that like splits mentality that you get drilled into by college, right? And it's still funny when people ask now, they'll be like, oh, well, what pace did you run for 100 miles? And I'm like, well, my pace was 60-minute miles, but I literally was never running that. I was either running a 10-minute mile and some were 30-minute miles. So it's just pace is kind of relative, especially in the more mountainous races.
And Rich brought up at the beginning your first attempt at Leadville, you got to mile 85 or 87, and the time had escaped. Was this year your second or third Leadville?
This is my second finish. Yeah.
Second finish.
Yeah.
So, what did that first one kind of light a fire? Were you discouraged at first? What kind of made you want to come back, and then what made you want to come back again?
Well, I paced a friend in 2016 at Leadville, and that was kind of where I was like, oh, this is a whole different, even from like 50 milers and 100Ks and stuff. This is like a whole different ball game, and that really like inspired me to want to do 100. Um, and I think I was equal parts discouraged and motivated um, after the first. I don't think of it as a failure. I just think of it as like a trial run, I guess. Um, I actually think that DNF was probably the greatest thing that happened to my running career because I learned so much from that, and I know exactly how and when and why to do things. I feel like from that I actually think that was probably my biggest blessing in disguise for ultra running.
Did you know, like, as you were getting closer, that it was like the seconds were ticking? Were you like
Yeah.
sprinting to try to get at least through the aid station so you could take a break and regroup?
Well, I wasn't sprinting because I think part of the reason why I just didn't know, and this is going to sound somewhat unappealing to many, I just didn't know how bad my body could feel and I could still keep going. And that was like, I think that's one of the keys to ultra running is you have to just like know how bad it's going to feel and be willing to keep going. and I didn't trust my body enough that I wasn't gonna like damage it probably. Um, and so I think I kind of let that take over my mindset.
Yeah. I always tell people, it hurts up to a certain point and then it doesn't get any worse.
Yeah.
And I also tell people like I've taken a lot longer to recover from road marathons than I have from a trail 100 race. You
Yes,
know,
I agree.
you might have some toenails that are gonna fall off eventually, and um, but for the most, I mean, yeah, I can remember go after certain road marathons, like going downstairs or upstairs backwards and things like that. But I mean, after the three Leadvilles and the other one I did, I was pretty much back to normal relatively quickly.
Yeah, I definitely I did the Big Sur Marathon, I think in 2015. And I remember the day after, like not being able to get up off the toilet without assistance because
Yeah.
my quads hurt so bad. So I haven't had that from ultra running.
Go
Emily,
ahead, Jim.
what was the next attempt at 100 miles after that first Leadville?
So my next attempt, I knew I wanted to go back and do Leadville again. And luckily I had won a coin in one of the other races that same year. So I had an entry guaranteed for the next year. So I think that was really lucky. And that was a big motivating factor. And I think, then that's the second year is when I started working with Rich. And I think the first year I just did kind of all the cardinal things you don't do in an ultra. I overtrained. I was running like 80, 90 miles a week. I was doubling like ton. And I just like my body doesn't do well with that. Even like in college, I think the most I ever ran was maybe like 50 miles a week. And then I just went out way too fast and I didn't eat enough in the beginning and just, and everyone had told me what to do and what not to do. And I just had to go experience it for myself. So
So not to give Rich a free infomercial right now, but you did bring it up and you mentioned that first year you didn't have any guidance, and then that second year to get over the hump you had guidance. So anyone listening to this podcast that might have just done what you did that first year, did an ultra, thought because they were a college runner they could do it, and they didn't get across the finish line. What is the difference of having a coach and having a guide to help you across that line?
for me, I like having a coach because one, I like having someone tell me what to do because if I have to think about it, it gets way harder to get out the door a lot of times too. Um, and I think the biggest thing with Rich especially is he works on like ultras are so mental more than physical. Like, yes, you need to train and you need to run and you need to train mindset too. And that's something that Rich really works on, especially with me. And I think too, I know when I work with a coach, I believe that if I do what they tell me to do, so if Rich tells me to run XYZ on day ABC, if I do that, I trust him that I will finish. I will do exactly what I want to do. And I think that's huge, just having that implicit trust in him that also gives me trust in myself to do it.
So you bring having trust in Rich. Was there any time during that first season or throughout you working with Rich where you're like, I'm not sure about that. Have you had any of those moments?
I mean, honestly, no, because I think we work well together. And I think that's another thing, like having that relationship with the coach and being able to be like, hey, this week I like have XYZ going on and I just can't do that. And then being like, great, let's move this here and move that there. And I also am the kind of person who, if you tell me to do something, I generally do it. I'm not gonna like go out on my own. And that's, sometimes for better or for worse, but I like to think of myself as being a coachable person. And it's also like you spend so much money and time on these races. It's why wouldn't I prepare?
And I always tell at least more so with the high school kids, but I always like, if you do everything I say and it goes wrong, then you can blame me. Like, you can point the finger at me. You don't have to take any ownership of anything. But if you don't listen to everything I say, then you can't point the finger at me.
Yeah, no, I like that. I've never, it is, I like to say in ultras, because I was trying to count the other day, and I think I've done over 30 at this point, total ultras, like hundreds to 50Ks. And experience is priceless. And having someone who can coach you into experience, it's also priceless, I think. And just having, like, I don't really get nervous for races at all. Like, I'm nervous, excited, and though I know when I step on the starting line, like, I've done everything possible to prepare myself physically and mentally, and that just like gives me a lot of calm and confidence, which I think is essential.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, your best friend and your worst enemy is the 3 inches between your ears. And that's, I also think that, like you said, that first year, and I think I even did it. It was like, I need to run X amount of miles every week in order to be able to do this. And one of the things I've learned is that you don't, like Carl Meltzer's one of the OGs of OGs and one of the most, decorated, and he doesn't really run high mileage. And I think that goes back to that experience. The more you do it, the more you just have that experience of what it takes to get to the finish line and really realize 100 miles isn't really that far in the grand scheme of things. Like the first time, it's like, man, I remember the first time I did Silver Rush, and I was like, I don't know how I would turn around to do another 50 miles. But then you get in it and you do it, and you're like, okay. And then by the fourth, fifth, or sixth one, you're kind of like, all right, the course is a little bit different, but I know like I've just got to keep moving forward. I know where I'm going to run. I know where I'm going to hike. I'm going to get from aid station to aid station, see my crew, see my people. And yeah, it's a wrap. We got this.
Yeah, I think when people ask me about ultra running and things, I just say experience is priceless, and the only way to get experience is to fail too. So that comes along with the territory. I think every race I learn a lesson from things that go wrong or mistakes that I make, and I think just having that mindset of everything's an opportunity to get better for the next time, and that's a huge bonus for me.
And when you're on the ski patrol or were on the ski patrol, sorry for me being ignorant to knowing if you're still on the ski patrol, but
I
does that
am.
get in the you are does
Yeah.
that get in the way of your training?
I think, well, just winter here, it's tough to run here, and it's tough to run distance, and it's tough to run fast here just because the weather is so variable. And um I think cross training, though, I think makes me a little bit more durable. So like in the winter I don't run as much, and I ski, I skin. I just started Nordic skiing too, which, oh my God, if you want to kick your butt, do that. um and I think also just being in those outdoor environments just makes me a little tougher too, and just gives me a little bit different type of engine maybe. But I think if I definitely like, I love climbing. I like the mountains. I like techie, rocky courses. And I think the more time I spend in the mountains, the better I am at that kind of stuff anyway.
And being your third attempt at Leadville, and you've crewed there a bunch of times, what are your favorite parts of the course? What parts could you deal without? Could you deal without going get your shoes wet? How has the race changed since you started till now?
Oh man. I love Hope Pass because I like climbing, and I love like coming back over Hope Pass. If you're feeling halfway decent, it's just like the best feeling ever to pass people. And I think Rich said to me one time, you like suck their souls out a little bit when you pass them, and then you get their energy. And it's so true. Cause like if you're cruising at that point, you got it. Like it just is the best feeling. And it's so beautiful too. I hate Turquoise Lake. It feels like forever. It's so flat, it's rocky, it's rooty. You're just so close to being done at that point. It's when you're coming back, and I'm just like, I'm over it. I don't want to be here.
Yeah.
So,
I agree with you with both those statements. I never obviously ran the 100-mile race, but anytime when we lived there and I would run Turquoise, I'd be like, this distance can't be right. Like this always seems way longer than what they say. And with the Hope Pass, I will never forget. There was a year I was supposed to crew, and you were crewing someone, and we were out at Winfield, and my person who I was supposed to crew hadn't came in, and I wasn't too positive, and you just had a smile on your face, and you were like trying to cheer me up, and I remember looking over to you like, I'm so sorry I'm being so negative right now. And you're like, oh, it's good. So I'll never forget that PMA, and I'm just always grateful for it on that day.
well, that's very kind. I remember that year, and it was I think the thing that's changed the most in Leadville is it's kind of the logistics of it have gotten way harder in some ways. And I crewed last year. I didn't run. I was crewing and pacing one of my really good friends who has crewed and paced me for all my races too. And then this year we ran it together, which was like super special because how many people go out and run 100 miles together on a weekend? But I was just like kind of, I don't know if I was shocked, but just like a little disappointed in kind of how the vibe has gotten a little low in certain parts of the race, and just kind of the logistics suck the life out of it a little bit. And, everyone wants to say things about corporate and stuff like that. And yeah, I don't know. It's tough because it is like the course is incredible. There's nothing like it. And I've done a bunch of other races. And though sometimes the vibe gets a little sucked out of it. So,
Well, that certainly bums me out because when Rich and I get on here, either before or after a podcast or when we meet on Sundays, Leadville always comes up. It has a special place in our heart. That said, hearing that, it's like your friend's kid that's like a teenager, and you remember how cool it was when it was a kid, but now they suck. So it's hard to hear that.
I mean, it still is incredible and awesome. It just is different, if that makes sense. And I feel like a lot of the other ones I've done have been pretty grassroots in a way, and it's just a different experience. And you don't really feel it as a runner when you're running, and though your crew definitely has a little bit more to deal with, unfortunately. So.
Yeah.
So that kind of goes into the next question I wanted to ask you. You just said some of the other ones you've done a little bit better on the way they are prepped and the way they kind of get people through them. What ultras would you suggest to someone? What kind of maybe catch your eye that you might not have run, but you've helped someone crew on?
Well, I think I can only speak to the ones I've done, and I did a couple back east, which I didn't love because now I'm not a humidity girl anymore. Um, plus I'm like, I'm a mountain goat. I can't just like run as much. But I did like the Run Rabbit and Steamboat is an impeccable race. They do an incredible job. Although the course is long, it's anywhere from 106 to 112 miles. They're not really sure. Um, and then I did a newer one in Montana where I was living the last couple years, and that one just the scenery was unbelievable. And it was a really like grassroots kind of race, and I really feel like that speaks to me a lot. Like we finished at this person's ranch, and they fed us with like meat from their farm, and like they had shot a moose earlier that year, and so we were having moose, and like it just, the vibe was really incredible, and just very, each race is very different, but I really enjoy those kind of more rugged, low key ones.
I was listening to AJW, his podcast. I don't know if you're familiar with
Mhm.
that, but he was talking about the big three races, Western, Hard Rock, and Leadville, and he was trying to do the analogy of comparing them to like universities. And he said Western States is like the Ivy League. It's like the Princeton, the Harvard, the Yales. Like it's the OG of OGs, the oldest, the most prestigious. He said that Hard Rock is kind of like one of those small, like New England schools, like Amherst or Williams. Like it's very small, but it's very prestigious. You still get a great education. And he was saying that Leadville is like a Power Five conference. It's like the Big Ten. It's like the SEC. It's like it's loud. It's obnoxious. It's in your face. It's like so I just thought that was kind of funny because, yeah, I mean, Leadville as a town is grown and changed a lot since the first time I was up there. But Jimmy and I, it has a special place in our heart, and I love going up there and crewing and doing that stuff. But you can also see that, like you said, logistically, it's kind of a pain in the butt. And I think the one year that we crewed for paced for Jimmy, I mean, we had to walk like 2 miles, I think, to get to the aid station at May Queen that year. So it's like I get why, and I just read Cole Colber. He wrote a book about the
Mhm.
race and the history of it. So I read all of that. So I get the want to get so many people up there and what that does for the town and the community, how important that is. But it's also it takes away from that kind of grassroots vibe of, 300 people. And I think unfortunately they kind of they bank on, people signing up and not being capable of doing it or making it to be even making it to Twin Lakes the first time outbound.
Yeah, it's tough because, yeah, like you said, like the town has changed, and I haven't lived there, but I've been going there for over a decade now, and it's it's great in some ways, and it kind of has lost a little flavor in other ways. And though I think I was a little apprehensive of doing the race this year because I hadn't run it since 2018, but I picked it because I had an opportunity to get in, which is hard to do. And then I also felt like it was the best option for me if I wanted to do 100 this summer, just because I have a new job and I had just moved back. And logistically, it's much easier to get up there. It's 45 minutes from where I live. And um, I do feel like the race still has a lot of magic and kind of that special sauce in it. They haven't sucked all of it out yet.
Well, with all that said, obviously you continue to do these races in hope of, I would assume, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but to get into the Princeton, the Harvard, the Yale, the granddaddy, grandma of all the Western States 100. But what else piques your interest? What's on the horizon? What stokes your vibe? What do you got? What are you looking at?
I think, I don't know, this is the question people always ask, right? Why do you do it, and why do you keep doing it? And I don't always have a really good answer. And I think the thing, and I think about this sometimes in a race, because it takes me like 4 or 5 hours when I'm running 100 to kind of like wake up, and everyone's like chit chatting the first like 10 miles and whatever. And I'm just sitting there and I'm like, oh, my back hurts. What am I doing? My calves are tight. It's 4 in the morning. I can't believe I signed up for this crap.
Yep.
And then something switches at like mile or hour, like 5 or 6. And I'm like, oh, I'm kind of like built for this. I'm just built to like grind and cruise and I don't know anything more in depth than that, and other than like it feels like what I should be doing. right now, just being out there for a long time.
Emily, you mentioned moving back to Colorado after going to school in Montana. I've spent some summers in Montana, but the winters kind of scare me, thinking about the winters in Montana. But that's just what you hear, right? When you grow up on the East Coast, you hear the winters are horrible in Colorado, but they're actually better in Colorado than they are in the East Coast, in my opinion. What is your kind of anecdote? What do you kind of think of Montana compared to Colorado? Would you have stayed in Montana if you didn't have a life in Colorado? How's the training in Montana?
There definitely winter is dark and it can be very cold up there. Um, there was one week when I lived up there where it was like -40.
Ooh,
And that was like pretty shocking to me.
wow.
And I like was like, oh, maybe I'll go for a run. And I like lasted like 5 minutes. I was running in my like heated ski socks. Um, but I think I I'm a winter sports enthusiast, so like winter is almost just as if not more fun than summer to me sometimes. So I think I really like thrived in that environment. And then obviously summer up there is just incredible and beautiful, and the mountains are pretty unbelievable up there and spectacular. And I think I definitely could have stayed there if I didn't have other things, bringing me back to Vail. But it's like I'm going from one amazing place to another amazing place, and I can't be too upset about how my life has turned out from one place to the other.
Right. And mentioned that you went to school in Montana, and I kind of felt some kind of connection because we were both older people that went back to school. And when I went back to school, I'm like, I am so old. And then within a couple months, where she's like, oh, Emily's going to school. I'm like, all right, like yeah, I got someone in here in the struggle, and Rich can tell you, I'd come home and we were talking before we hopped on. I was definitely the old man, and I always thought I was hip and cool. And then when I went back to school, I was like, I am not hip, I am not cool, I am my father, I am that guy that I used to hate when I was in junior college, that older dude. How was that experience for you? Was there any bit of kind of, man, what am I doing? Because I had that thought like every day.
Yes, I totally agree. Like I said before, I felt sometimes I was like, I am a grandma. Like, I have no clue what's going on in here. And these kids are coming to class with their midriffs out and stuff. I'm just like, what is happening? Um, and yeah, it was interesting. So I went back to school at Montana State and I was getting my nursing degree. So it definitely I think I was head and shoulders above a lot of people just because I think life experience is very important in all areas of academia, but especially when it comes time to like, you know, keep someone alive or not. And some of the stuff my classmates said. One girl asked me, like the tinsel people like put in their hair, like girls do, and she was like, "Oh, do you have that in your hair?" And I was like, "No, those are grays."
Oh,
Oh man.
Yeah, that was a good day. Um, yeah, but I think honestly, and you can speak to this too. I think, well, one, I like ran track in college, and so that was like having a job full time. And then, I was 19, I didn't know what I wanted to do, and I definitely didn't put school first all the time. And I think going back and kind of having that like game plan of like, I need to get to the end of this because I need to like start living my life and making money. I think that I was like, oh, wow, school is so much easier when you're not like going out all the time and, going to practice and you're not tired. And I think just being older and having that routine, and I think running was one of my biggest things that kept me really, I would, use running as like a reward for myself for putting in some time in the front of the computer, reading and stuff. And I think unless I was wearing scrubs to class, I was wearing running clothes pretty much every time. So Yeah.
Do you feel like your experience as an ultra runner helped with college and kind of that long haul and going back in your 30s and seeing the end, like, man, I'm going to be this age when I graduate? Do you think, because I know that helped me, and I'm not even an ultra runner, but I say to Rich all the time, I just had a crazy work trip, and he's like, how's it going? I was like, dude, I'm not even over Hope Pass the first time yet. So like I always have those like comparisons for him.
Yeah, I think ultra running has really helped pretty much everything in my life, kind of mentally and physically, and just being like, one, being patient, two, understanding that in order to get to the finish line, there is a lot of hard work that has to happen before then, before you even get to the starting line. And then just kind of having that mindset of like, even when things are bad, like you just have to keep moving forward. And I think now in my role as a ER nurse, I think that's super huge, and just also like being calm, like just not letting things knock me off my feet as much as some other people. Like I think that's like, I like to say that's my superpower, is just staying calm even when things are falling apart around me. And I definitely think that has a lot to do with ultra running.
Well, talking about just keeping moving forward, we're 45 minutes into it. Let's get into the race. You say you learned something each time out. What did you learn this time out? And yeah, give us the good, the bad, and the ugly.
Well, I think I really surprised myself this year because I really had no expectations going in, because I have been working. I started a new job. I moved back. I had gotten married. I had moved. I had a lot of things going on, external factors, and just I felt like all summer I was either work or I was training, and not doing very much sleeping. And I had been working a lot of night shifts and just kind of feeling just pretty run down. And I know I had texted you a few times just being like, I feel like blah. And that's pretty unusual for me. So I was literally just getting to that starting line. I was like, I just want to finish under 30 hours. I had no expectations at all. And I think the one really special thing about this year is I was running it with my friend Corey, and she had done it last year for her first time. And she's done all my races with me and as a pacer, and so it was really quite the experience to get to do it together. And we just paced exactly where we wanted to be. And I started, once I got through my 4 hours of just hating everything and hating my life and my choices, I kind of like was like, oh, I feel really good, and I feel pretty comfortable in the level of like discomfort that I'm in. And I knew, like, leaving Twin Lakes to do Hope Pass the first time, I was like, oh, I feel fresh. Like I feel like I just started. Unfortunately, Corey started having some like toe issues, and her leg started bugging her. She's been dealing with some plantar fasciitis. And so we definitely like took a little bit of our time coming down Hope, especially. And we took a little bit longer time in Winfield. And once we got back to Twin Lakes and I got my pacer and she got her pacer, we had kind of talked about, like, we're going to run our own race. We're going to run together. But if, we need to do our own thing, we do our own thing. And I, like, once I got my pacer at Twin Lakes, I was like, LFG, like, I'm ready. And I was kind of, in my mind, I was like, oh, if I like put the hammer down, I could try to go for sub 25. And then I was like, I don't know if I'm ready for that level of pain. Like I just hadn't trained. And kind of like we were talking about, like that PTSD of just like that suffering in that place. And I was like, I don't know if I can do that right now, but I'm just gonna ride this wave. And if I start feeling bad, I start feeling bad, but I'm just gonna keep cruising. And I cruised all the way to the finish pretty much. I dropped my pacer, unfortunately, on the boulevard, but she caught me at the end. She got a ride. And yeah, I remember looking down at the boulevard and I was like, oh, I'm going like 11-minute pace. And I'm like, I'm tired, but I'm not like, it's not the end of the world for me right now. And so I feel like that was really like, I feel like coming in with no expectations, I just really was able to just run my own race. And my crew is so dialed. We've been doing this for a long time. My mom, Martha, she's pro crew at this point. I'm so lucky to have her. She's been in almost every ultra with me, and I definitely spent a little bit longer than I normally do at aid stations. Just kind of being with Corey and wanting to stay together, and not that that's a bad thing by any means, but I know like once I started rolling, it was like I was in and out of there real quick. So that makes a huge difference. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
Well, that's amazing. And I think sometimes just in situations like that where you don't have expectations is when the best outcomes come about from it. Like it's you have no and I think that also coming from the high school and the college background where like everything was an expectation, like every meet there was some sort of expectation, whether it was winning your heat or trying to run your fastest time or score points at the conference or whatever. It's just so much expectations all the time. It just sucks the fun out of that. I mean, it was just I enjoyed doing college athletics, but it wasn't fun like running ultra marathons. It's just a different mindset. And I think a lot of that has to do with there's just no, I mean, you can have expectations for the most part. It's not like you're doing it for yourself. And so there's no expectation. And I think that's when sometimes the best performances come from.
Yeah, I definitely agree. And I think like we talked about earlier, I know when I line up on that starting line, I know I'm going to finish, period. And what I do between now and then, is kind of up to me and just kind of how I feel and how the day goes. And I think I like this year especially, I really like embraced that. Um and I was saying after the race, I'd had some pretty not enjoyable runs this summer. Like I'd had some grindy runs and some just runs where I was just like, standing there leaning on my poles, just being like, I don't know what's happening, but I don't feel good. And honestly, I feel like that was such a blessing because that's how you feel a lot of times when you're running 100 miles. And I was like, oh, yeah, the pain cave. I've been here. This is my home.
Yeah.
So,
And I would also agree with you too. I always tell people like the first marathon is the worst part of a 100-mile race for me, at least. It's like,
yes,
yeah, like I don't want to be around people talking. Like, shut up! Like it's too
I
early
know.
for your conversations about all the races you've run or the races you're going to run, or like get away from me. Um, and then yeah, I just don't want to. And it's like, why did I do this? Why did you sign up for this? But it's also like, well, you can't drop out because then it's way easier just to tell people how you did than to explain to them why you didn't finish it, or just like, yeah, I just didn't want to run 100 miles at 20 miles, so I stopped. It's like, it's like the scene in Ferris Bueller's Day Off where he's like, he'll keep calling me, I'll go, okay. That's like the first 25, 26 miles for me all the time. It's like never again, never again, never again. And then inevitably, you know, less than 24 hours after you cross the finish line, you're like, all right, what's next?
Yeah.
What stokes my bliss? What buckle looks cool on the internet?
Yeah, I agree. And that was one of the best parts about running it with someone is you were like protected from the one-off conversation. So like Corey and I run together all the time, and so we kind of know the vibe of like it's time to chit chat or it's time to just run quiet. And when people realize you're running with someone, they don't like bug you as much. That was a blessing this year for sure.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Corey, you brought up or Emily, sorry, we're talking about Corey, but Emily, you brought up that this year, as far as prep, it wasn't what you would have liked as far as moving back, having a new job, trying to figure life out, being on your pulse, being super tired. Do you feel your body at work as a runner helped with that performance that you had? And it was just, like you said, kind of, hey, I wasn't taking it as super serious. I was running with my friend and it kind of just fell into place.
Yeah, I think like I was saying before, like experience is priceless, and I knew exactly the pace I needed to run. I had talked about it with Rich, and it was funny. He was like, "I feel like you can go faster." And I was like, "No, no, no. I don't want to put that on myself." I was like, "If I do, awesome. But this is what I want to do." And I think my other superpower in these races, besides being calm, is I just know how to like pace really well. And I think that experience too, like I know how my body feels and I know how to like hold back and push at the right times for me, so that I do, like I always say, I feel better at hour 20 than I do at hour 2. Um, and for me, I'm not like winning races. I'm not finishing, you know, in the top whatever. And so I am spending a lot longer out there. And so there is like a level of like energetic management that has to be a part of my race strategy for sure.
And at the beginning, you mentioned that you like running slow and you like snacking. So I've been waiting this whole episode. What are your snacks of choice when you're in an ultra?
Oh man, this has evolved so much, and I could talk about this for hours and hours. But
You've
one,
come
I'm a
to the
big
right
believer.
place.
I'm a big believer, one, in real food, and two, you do whatever works the best for you. And so when people ask me, I'm like, this is what I do, but figure out what works for you. And rule number two is nothing new on race day. So I don't try anything that I've never eaten before on race day. But unfortunately, this year they did not have watermelon at the aid stations. That was like one thing I was like super bummed about. But I did Pop-Tarts this year. I used to eat those in college, and I honestly hadn't eaten them since then because once again PTSD. And so that was like a nice thing to come back to this year.
What kind?
Cinnamon sugar,
Does
classic.
does that have frosted or no frosted?
Frosting,
All
yes,
right, all right.
frosting. And then I went pretty like uh baked good heavy this year. So I was eating like little soft chocolate chip cookies. I did some Oreos. I did what else did I always do gummy bears. I did potato chips. I did tortilla chips too this year. That's something I recently got into because they're so salty. Um, some like mashed potatoes and a tortilla. That's pretty
Mm.
good. And then the best part about the races, especially at night, is you get ramen, and that's like nectar of the gods.
Hmm.
Um, and then I had a popsicle that was good, and then yeah, some Coke, and I don't love to drink a ton of calories, and I don't drink a ton of I don't like the really electrolyte drinks. I'm really like sensitive to like sweet stuff. So I'm fine with like water and Coke, or like even I'll just put like salt and lemon juice and water. Um, but like I said, it's just whatever works for you. And I like haven't had a gel in probably 5 years, and I don't plan on eating any ever again. So
Was that some PTSD? Was that a bad experience?
I just think they're disgusting. And why would I subject myself to that when I can literally eat a Pop-Tart and enjoy it and look forward to it? So yeah. I know the David Broche, the guy who broke the record this year, he like ate like 5 gels an hour. And I was like, if that's what it takes to break the record, then I don't need it, because I wouldn't be able to function. I would be in the woods the whole race. So
That's kind of brutal. 5 gels an hour.
yeah, so gross. So gross. But
And those, I think he said he used Morton, and those are like
yeah,
flavorless. Like they don't
Yeah,
have
I don't
any. It's like just like sweet. It's not like any. It's hard to describe. It doesn't have a flavor, but it's like sweet. But it goes down. They go down pretty easy. But
yeah,
I don't know if I could do 5 an hour.
no. Oh, Uncrustables. That was my other one this year. Those are just I did a race in Aspen um at the end of July and they had them there and I was like, "Oh my God, where have these been my whole life? These are amazing." So,
Were you
yeah,
going
those are
grape
pretty.
jelly?
I go strawberry.
Yeah,
Yeah.
strawberry.
Yeah.
They also have. I don't know if you've seen them. They have the Nutella ones,
Yes.
and they also have honey.
Yeah. I tried the Nutella. They gave me heartburn. So
Okay.
I have to chocolate. I can't run and eat chocolate. It gives me heartburn, but yes, they're quite
Yeah.
delicious. But yeah, I think that's my other superpower too, is I'm usually a pretty good eater during these races. And so that's like huge because you'll hit a point where you just don't want to eat anymore. And I've also done a race where I had food poisoning and couldn't eat anything. So uh, the great 100K of 2021. So or no, that was 2020. Um, so yeah, I
Is that
think
Never Summer?
yes, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Did you have
So
food poisoning before you got on the start line?
I did. I didn't know I had salmonella, but I knew I was not feeling well. So yeah,
And you finished?
I finished. Yep. I didn't eat or drink a single thing. Well, nothing stayed in my body. We'll put it that way.
Yeah,
So
that's impressive.
is it impressive? People are like, wow. And I'm like, yeah, I think that's just being stupid and stubborn, but
Well, we're kind of sickos over here at Airey Bros Radio, so I think that's impressive.
well, thank you.
It's a fine line. It's a
Yeah,
fine line
exactly.
of being a little crazy and then also just being a complete savage. So
Very true.
we also I think I don't know if you mentioned your secret weapon is the carbonated deliciousness of a ice cold LaCroix at
Oh,
some point.
yes. Yes. Yeah, there's nothing better, especially when it's hot. And it was warm this year, but it wasn't crazy hot. But I've done races where it's very, very hot and having that cold LaCroix at the aid station is like amazing. And just sometimes I'll think about it for hours before I get there. So
And you do peach pear, or is that your go-to or
I actually just did Spindrift this year and I
oh,
did the blood orange. And it
okay.
was, I was drinking it while I was going through Twin Lakes the first time. And I had a few people ask me where I'd gotten it. And I said, I brought this. So yeah,
How much money you got?
yeah, exactly.
But it's always fun too, being like the more experienced person where you have the cooler and the bags and everything. And the 50K I did down here this summer, there was a gentleman that just happened to be sharing some shade in the area where we were sharing our shade, and he literally showed up with a water bottle, I think a Rain energy drink, and I don't think he had any gels or anything. And so I was just like giving him stuff throughout the day, like, "Hey man, you want to try this? You want to try this? Here's some ginger ale." Like he was at the end, he was just like, "You saved my life today." Because I had hop water, I had LaCroix, I had all kinds of stuff, and people are like, "You don't have to give this away." I'm like, "Well, that's why I brought it here, because at one point in time I was like you and showed up here unprepared, and so thankfully there was someone that saved my life at one point in time. So here's here's a here's a spindrift. Next time, make sure you bring more than a t-shirt and a Rain energy drink for an all day timed last man standing type of event.
Oh man. Yeah, I can't even imagine. And I think that's also experience and just like streamlining your gear and knowing exactly what you want and yeah, just being as organized as you can for your crew and that just makes everything so much better. A couple years ago, I discovered 2-gallon Ziploc bags, and that like changed my life and my mom's life for crewing. So,
Yeah.
yeah, it's just, I think that having those little things, and like you said, I love sharing. Like I said, I could talk about this forever, and I love sharing it with people and getting them kind of stoked and seeing what they can do when they're getting a little more dialed in.
Yeah, and that's part of that too is inevitably later in the race, you're always going to come through an aid station, and there's going to be someone in there that's like, "I'm done. I'm not." And that opportunity to be like, "No, you're not done. You're not. Come on, let's go. Like, what do you need? Like, here, do this, take this, put this on your foot. Let's get you back out here. You're gonna regret this in the morning if you don't at least keep going until they pull you off the course."
Yeah,
Um,
definitely. Corey and I, there was a guy, because Leadville's an out and back. When when we started going up Hope, the leaders were coming back over, and there was a guy who was like probably in the top 20, and he was just like laying on the side of the trail, and we were like, "What do you need?" We gave him some Tylenol, and we gave him some Pepto-Bismol chews, and we're like, "Oh, you gotta go. You're in the top 20. Let's go, buddy." Like, so I like to think we had a little trail karma there.
mm-hmm, mm-hmm. So I got one last one, Jim. If you got anything else, go. But talking about the crew. Vince Lombardi said you pick the right team, you always win. Jimmy is my crew chief. He takes control when we're able to do that. You have a very special crew that rolls with you. Your crew chief has been there through and through. Can you just kind of go into that a little bit and for me close it out for me? And last 100 I did, I went back to New Jersey specifically so that my I could get my pops to crew for me and kind of take that experience in because he has never seen me at an ultra, but they were always there. Like they rarely missed meets in college and definitely not in high school. So I wanted to kind of give that experience to him, and I know you share that with Martha. So if you could maybe touch on that.
Yeah, I think that's such a special, unique experience. And yeah, I can only imagine how cool it was for him to see you thriving in your own backyard. And that's such a neat thing. I think I've done a few ultras without any crew and stuff. And I think just that emotional boost of having someone there who like, you can have friends crew you and stuff, but having someone who like is deeply involved in your life and cares so much about you and has kind of seen your whole career up to this point of running is really special. And just also having my mom be a runner, and she's done a couple ultras herself, and um she's a very calm person also, and I think that's huge. And I feel just really, it's just like it's a fun weekend to spend with her. And I know it's a lot of work for her, so I obviously appreciate it. And I just think it's such a, for me, I say ultra is a team sport, because I know I wouldn't be as successful if she wasn't there. And I think the greatest thing I can do is have success in that race, and whether that looks like finishing or having a PR or just like, I always think about my goals for the race are always to smile when I come into the aid station, and I always say thank you, like want to say thank you, and try to like, either give a little hand squeeze or a hug or kiss on the cheek or something just to like show my appreciation. And I think that like really fuels me too emotionally for the race. So
Man, those are some epic goals for a race. I need to kind of get on that level with any kind of competition or just endeavors in general.
yeah, I think, and this is something that Rich is so great about in the coaching. It's like having that positive mindset. And you see people coming into these aid stations and they're so rude to their crew and they yell at them. And it's just like, like just like calm breeds calm, negativity breeds negativity. And just the more like positive I am, and, you know, I can, even when I'm in the pain cave or I'm having a bad day or I'm feeling nauseous, like, if I can come in and make a little joke or crack a smile, and then they just like kind of feed off that, and it makes it so much better. And I ran a race in Vermont, and my crew set up like there was like, it was a double-sided aid station, so you came through it twice but going opposite ways, and they set up on one side, and I couldn't find them when I came back in, so I just like left because I was like, I'm not gonna wait here. And my mom she sprinted like 8 miles. Like, she tried to catch me when she realized that I had left, and so she like literally went and sprinted 8 miles carrying like a sandwich that I had wanted at the aid station. It's like, just that kind of level of dedication. I'm like, how could I not succeed when I have people like that on my team? So
Martha's hired. So, Rich, I have some Colorado rapid fires that we could probably start off with that we usually do at the beginning with Colorado guests, but I remembered them, so we'll
Yeah.
throw them in here.
We are. These are going to be much different answers than some of our other Colorado guests, for sure.
I feel she's not going to let us down.
No, not at all.
Yeah.
She's going to come correct.
Do you own a Melly?
Yes.
More than one?
2.
All right.
One fuzzy, one of the traditional, and then I got one of the wool ones last year. So.
All right. Respect. Do you have a favorite 14er?
I think Holy Cross. I've done it a few times, and it's a pretty epic one, and it's right in the backyard of Vail.
All right. And do you have a favorite Colorado craft beer?
Well, I actually don't drink anymore. I stopped drinking January 12th of 2022.
Respect.
But if I was going to pick a craft beer before then, I really liked anything from Left Hand. That was my go-to. Mama's Little Yellow Pills was a good one.
That's a good one. We really would say craft beer or whiskey.
Whiskey.
Yeah.
I've never been much of a whiskey drinker, but yeah.
And then the other one we always ask is ski or snowboard, but we know you ski.
Well, I'm pretty biased.
Yeah. I think was that the.
Well, I think we know the other one too. Is Vail your mountain of choice, or do you have a favorite mountain that you don't live at?
Well, I mean, I love Vail, but it's also like kind of going into the office on the weekend sometimes. So I spend a lot more time in the backcountry now when I'm out and about. But my favorite mountain to ski when they have snow is Aspen Highlands, because it's so steep and just pretty different than anything else. So, yeah.
Is that like a natural progression in skiing that eventually you just get to the point where you just do backcountry?
No, I think it depends on the person, and I think backcountry has gotten immensely more popular, obviously, because like the equipment has gotten a lot better. But yeah, I think mostly because in the past my days off were Saturdays, and it's just like you can't ski here on a Saturday. So we were like, my husband and I would just go for a tour and call it a good day. So
Have you ever skied like Elbert or any of those?
I have skied Elbert. Yeah, I've actually skied. I've done almost as many 14ers in the winter as I have in the summer. So yeah, it's not
What's that
always like
like?
fun skiing, but it's
Is it
cool.
pretty
There's how
windy?
you do it. Hmm.
Is it pretty windy?
Yes,
Yeah.
very windy. Yeah.
Not that you want to incriminate yourself, but have you ever started an avalanche or had a close call?
I have been, I have witnessed some very close calls. One was on a 14er on Quandary, skiing it with a big group of people, and luckily nobody was hurt, but it was pretty eye-opening to the danger that exists out there. So yeah. Yeah. I'm pretty cautious though. I'm like the first person to say, like, I don't care how long it took me to get up here. I'm not skiing that. I'm gonna go back down the way we came. So preservation.
I
Yeah,
got well,
always.
actually, oh, go ahead,
Sorry,
Jim.
I was just gonna say, always seeing those videos, and I worked with a bunch of ski bums when we lived out there, and they'd always like show you stuff, and I'd be like, "You're crazy."
Yeah. Yeah. It happens, but I generally do my best to avoid those situations. So
Eh, Your last one, Emily. I grew up lifeguarding. There's a lot of lifeguarding at the Jersey Shore, which can be life or death at a lot of sometimes. There's definitely a lot of responsibility that goes along with it, but it's also when you see the how the sausage is made, you realize that maybe it's uh not as some of the people aren't necessarily as qualified as you would like them to be, especially looking back as a 48-year-old. Do you see some of that on the mountain?
um is you mean like as ski patrol is
Yeah. Or is
our
it like a
patrol
pretty solid vetting process?
yeah, our
Mm.
patrol is pretty we function at a pretty high level and the interesting thing is our mountain is we have avalanche terrain obviously, but our main focus is medical because we are so busy with just volume of people. And so I don't think I really realized until I went to nursing school just how much I had seen on the mountain. And I think our patrol really prides itself on being pretty high level practitioners. And if you're not, like, you're not going to last very long. Um, so yeah, I mean, definitely you see a few things, but I think our patrol is pretty. We pride ourselves pretty hard on being as good of patrollers as we are skiers too. So
Yeah. You got a dog dreaming over there?
I do. Can you hear him?
Yes.
He's under the
Is that
table.
Ripken?
Yeah, it's Rifkin.
Rich, I'm happy you said something because I saw you smirk and I was gonna
I was like, I
start
don't know if you can
dying.
hear it. I don't know. Yeah, I was just worried they were gonna like bark the whole time I was on here. So
That's awesome. All right, official final four.
okay,
Emily, are you a coffee drinker?
yes.
How do you brew your coffee and how do you take it?
Well, I'm a little bougie, so I have an espresso machine and I have a milk frother. So every day I have an oat milk latte.
All right.
So yeah,
Will you be having any pumpkin spice lattes since the season's coming up?
I'm not a big pumpkin spice girl, but I do love a chai now and then. So
All right.
I can be a little basic.
Are you rocking with any particular beans or any particular roasts that you support?
We have the color coffee roasters here is really good in Vail too, but we have we have a Starbucks in the hospital and that's pretty I definitely spend at least, $20 a week there. Some by necessity, some just because I need to reward myself for, you know, being at work. So
Treat yourself.
yeah.
Emily, do you have any daily practices or rituals that you do on a regular basis to show up as the strongest version of yourself?
Well, for me, getting outside every day is probably number one. And even like when I work 7 a.m. to 7 p.m., or if I work 7 p.m. to 7 a.m., I just have to carve out at least an hour to be outside. And that could be running or skiing or even just hiking with the dogs. But that's like number one in my book. And then I try to do 10 minutes of core every day because I feel like you always have 10 minutes to do something and that will pay off. Even if it doesn't make my core look good, I'll definitely feel better at mile 80 of 100 or hour 11 of my shift when I'm on my feet. So
Are you mixing that routine up? Do you have a set 10 minutes that you do that's your go-to, or is it just how you're the vibe that
I
you're
like to mix
feeling?
it up.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Nothing but hollow rocks, 10 minutes. Emily, what are you listening to right now? Music, podcasts, audiobooks? Are you reading anything?
Well, I'm super excited because I'm going to the Fred Again show this week. So I've been listening to a lot of him, just getting stoked. And I don't listen to a lot of music when I run, but I have this playlist called In Case of Emergency. And
Mhm.
it's pretty much just like Fred Again. Um, and then I am reading a book called The Women, and it was recommended to me by a bunch of people, and it's about a group of nurses in Vietnam and kind of what they experienced over there, and then what they experienced like coming back to this country. And um, it's good so far. And then I always try to read like a nonfiction and a fiction book, but I'm not reading anything nonfiction right now. So
Um, when is that show?
Wednesday,
Wednesday.
yes, September 11th.
Travis going with you? You got a crew rolling?
No, I'm going with another friend, Andrew. So
All
yeah,
right.
it'll be it'll be great.
All right. Well, pump your fist for the Airey Bros a little bit.
Oh yes, I will.
Last one, Emily. We know you don't drink anymore, and we respect that, and we get down with that. But maybe it's food. We talked earlier about the crab cakes in Maryland. Maybe you're a closet Swiftie. Do you have a guilty pleasure?
Oh man, I love ice cream, and then I'm also non-dairy, not by choice, but discovering like non-dairy Ben and Jerry's is pretty detrimental to my so I can't really keep it in the house, but when I do, that and Oreos are my two biggest ones. Yeah,
Together or
sometimes.
yeah?
And Cooler Ranch Doritos. Yeah.
Airey Bros get down with Cool Ranch Doritos.
Yeah.
Reminds us of Aunt Jones' house.
Yeah, it will be some PTSD dark hole if I get into a bag of Cool Ranch Doritos. Be licking my fingers, not very happy with myself.
I always wish they would like sell the dust in like a spice jar or something. So I'm like, I would literally put it on everything and anything. So yeah, might even snort it if I had to.
Take a little bit to
But
Fred again. Get
be
this
like, what
party
do you
started.
want? I'm on Cooler Ranch Dorito dust. I feel great.
Emily, thank you so much for your time tonight. Really enjoyed this conversation. Anytime Rich and I can talk Leadville, talk Colorado, ultra marathons, we know it's going to be a good episode. So thank you so much.
Well, thank you guys. Like I said, I'm honored, and I just I think you guys are amazing, and I feel so lucky to know you both and lucky to have just an awesome support system like Rich, and ready to see what's next this spring. So,
Well, as you get into winter, stay warm. Enjoy the snow. I know you love winter just as much as you love summer, so hopefully you get lots of turns this winter.
yes, thank you. I plan on it. Oh, I'm doing a Nordic race, a 50K Nordic race this winter. So,
And the same one or a different one?
yes, yeah.
Okay.
Hopefully they have snow this year so we can actually do it. But
That's
yeah.
in Wisconsin, right?
Mhm. Yes. Yeah, where it's like illegal to not eat cheese. So, that was a tough transition for me. But
No non-dairy cheese curds in Wisconsin, huh?
no. No.
All right, Emily, we'll be good. We appreciate you.
Thank you. You guys take care.